Good evening and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. This is our last Fresh Conversation until March 2023. Of course, you all know that the Fresh Book Festival will be February 23, 24, 25 in the beautiful city of Daytona Beach. And we welcome you back to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation on March the 13th, where we will be back with really good authors and content. And we want you to just put it on your calendar every Monday night at 8 o'clock. But our guest tonight is Reverend Dr. Mackey-Padilla, author of Sister Girl A through Z, Prayer Without Ceasing, and Inspired. Please welcome Dr. Mackey-Padilla to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. Thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening. It's my pleasure, and thank you for the invitation and the invite. I'm looking forward to the conversation with you tonight.
And Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is brought to you by Eyeless Diamonds LLC, Ladero Press, Milton McCulloch, a Dante production, and the Fresh Book Festival. Just a note that a Dante production presents Jazz for Lovers with Benny Yarbrough and Janine McAdams at Cinematique on Sunday, February 12th, 2023, from 2 to 4. It is before the biggest day in football. So come listen to some jazz and then go home and be able to be a part of the Super Bowl. And it is at Cinematique, February 12th at 2 p.m. If you have any questions for Dr. Padilla, please leave them in the chat room. And this conversation is being recorded. Good evening, Doctor. Please take a moment and give our audience a brief background.
Well, again, good evening to you all. It is my pleasure to be with you on tonight. A little bit of a background about myself. I am a native of Alexandria, Virginia, currently residing in Woodbridge, Virginia, and I matriculated through the Fairfax County High School and went to James Madison, registered in nursing, received my bachelor's there, went on to work as a nurse, as an extern at a Nova Health System in Fairfax Hospital. Continued until I passed my boards, then worked as a registered nurse, matriculated up to be the charge nurse. And then what happened was I had an injury through a car accident and exacerbated while I was at work. So I had to shift and transition a little bit. And so I went from day shift to 12-hour shifts, then to the night shift. And I realized, you know what? I don't think I can continue to do this after 4 years only of nursing inpatient. So from there, I had to really look at my life plan and what I was going to do next. Young person out of college, probably about 25, maybe 26 years old, went back to get my master's and accomplished that in 3 years in nursing administration. I transitioned at that point to a new job, and that's where I became like an educator in the system. And we trained healthcare professionals regarding the care for, in the 1990s, early 1990s, regarding HIV and AIDS. And so I wasn't sure whether I was going to do it in the beginning as a case manager in the early 90s, right after Magic Johnson had come out that he became positive. But then from there, I saw that there was a need in our community, and I launched into that area in that field. Stayed there until 2004. And we were training the healthcare providers. So we were reaching the doctors and the nurses and had conferences. And I was a speaker and traveled speaking across the country and internationally. And we had people like the Anthony Fauci. We had Redfield. These were just names of people that we would sit and talk to. There was a gentleman out west by the name of Dr. Ho, who was also big in HIV and AIDS care. Attended some of the international conferences and spoke there, et cetera. And so I resigned. Well, let me say this. I went back then to get my PhD after finishing my master's. And so after I finished that, I, in the midst of it, got married and had 2 children and took my comps 9 approaching 10 months pregnant while working full time, having a husband and 2 new babies. And after that, I went home to take care of my kids.
Good
Does
for
that make
you.
sense?
No, it makes, listen,
To take care of my kids.
yeah.
After receiving the PhD and where I was climbing corporate ladder, I let it all go and went home and took care of my kids for 22 years. And so
But
that's
those
kind of
seeds that
the
you water
beginning.
for 22 years are seeds that will grow and grow well. So
Yes, yes.
definitely worth the time and energy, right?
Yes,
Definitely. And let's go back to the HIV and AIDS. I think what people don't understand now is that Chocolate City is one of the largest municipalities that have the highest rate of HIV and AIDS, including the state of Atlanta. I mean, the city of Atlanta, of course. And so we as melanated people are not out of the war. But for some reason, the funding went out of the war, right? So we really, really need to be aware that HIV is still killing a whole lot of people who are melanated in this country. So for those of you who think that HIV has gone away, I started in HIV, oh my God, 2004. And so it's just as bad now as it was then. Is that correct, doctor? Pretty much? The statistics are pretty much the same.
yes.
So let's talk about, we're going to get to your novels, but before we do that, let's talk about your 501c3 and you also being, on top of all that, the CEO and founder of Move Empowerment. And tell us about Move and how you decided to develop that as an organization.
Move Empowerment Services is actually, at this moment, it is an LLC.
Okay.
I haven't branched to make it a 501c3, although it is not really designed, it's a faith-based organization. And so with that, I'm a nurse.
Yeah.
I kind of give things away. So it might as well be a
So why is not
501c3, right?
exactly?
Yes. And so, because for me, it's not about the money, it's about the message.
Mm-hmm.
And so MOVE stands for Motivating Others to Victory and Empowerment. And so, as the story continued, in 2005, I resigned from Inova Health System and I went home and said, God, okay, now what? And at that point, what he said was, move. And I said, okay. And he gave me that acronym, Motivating Others to Victory and Empowerment. It's an empowerment service organization. And my mission is to empower people to victoriously reach their full potential, excuse me. So that's the whole goal, to help us really, while we are on this earth, fulfill the assignments that we're called to do, whatever it might be for each individual. So our vision is that people are motivated and empowered to victoriously reach their goals and complete their assignments while they're here. And so I established Move in 2006. I then wrote a book called Emails That Move, and it stayed on the market for a little bit, and I had to go ahead and make sure it fizzled out.
Right.
And so that was an attempt to learn the aspect of writing. And once I reread it, I said, oh, Lord, don't let nobody buy it. And so I let it fizzle out. I didn't market it anymore. And thank goodness it's still listed on the computer, because once you list it, it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away, right?
But it's not available for purchase any longer. And so Move was established. I began some conferences early on, very low attendance to those conferences. And then in 2008, I took ill and I was sick for 10 years. And I really didn't think I was going to recover. They couldn't tell me what was wrong. And I'm finding out what is wrong, which I'll share a little bit about a little later. But During those 10 years, I was for the most part in the house. I didn't even leave the house. I was just here. But what God would do is he would wake me up. I would get old school pen, paper, and notebook, and I would write down whatever came, whatever came. I was writing and writing and writing. I mean, pencils, erasers, went through all of that. And I just poured out whatever came to me. And so doing that, I then around 2010, maybe it was closer to 15, I ended up closing it up, sealing it up, and putting it in the closet. Now, I don't know who was going to come get it, but
Right.
that's what I did. And it sat until 2020. God said to me, he said, look, sitting there chilling, I'm relaxing, I'm domestic. I didn't mind. I had my little Scrabble. I love to play Scrabble. I'm sitting there watching TV with my feet up in my recliner, and God said to me, move. I'm looked up, I'm like, what?
Oh, I know, right?
And he said, move. I said, what are you talking about? He said, now I want you to go upstairs, find the combination to whatever you sealed, open it up, and read what I gave you. And now move with it. And so at that moment, I began to read it and start to publish some of the many books that are to come. And so Move then was reestablished that year. It was dormant since 9 or 10. I reestablished Move Empowerment Services, and I have been moving and running ever since. Thank God I'm healed, I'm better, and since 2020, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Whatever he says do, wherever he says go, I'm trying to reach folks.
Do you move with adults or children?
I move with adults, but I have worked with teenagers and young adults as well.
And the company is established more virtually than it is one-on-one, or how are you doing that?
It is a combination of both. Every Friday morning, virtually on Facebook, I do what's called an inspirational moment. It started during the pandemic, and the vision was given to me through God by my brother, who said, you know what, people are needing encouragement right now. Why can't you just come online and give some encouraging words? So for 2.5 years, that's a piece of what Move does. Every Friday morning, I don't say a time because I'm not trying to establish potentially a church or anything along those lines, but I'm a faith-based organization. So it starts off with at least a scripture, but it comes with empowering words. We'll talk a little bit later, but also those conferences have resurfaced, and I'll share a little bit about how it is connected to one of the books. And so we do a combination of both. We're virtual. There's a YouTube channel, Instagram, and then we do things in person as well.
So in the midst of all you've done and are doing, how did you find the time to write books and be a part of ministry? So that's like a two-part question. How did you find the time to write books? And how did you find the time to get an R.E.V. in front of your name? Unpack that journey for us.
Well, I was licensed here in the Woodbridge area at Ebenezer Baptist Church as an associate in 2004. That came towards the end of my stint, if you will, of working in HIV. And so it led me to Africa. So I went to Kenya and was able to help an organization that's local here do some training in HIV and AIDS in Kenya, and also had the privilege and the opportunity to minister there in Kenya as well. Nairobi was amazing. Amazing experience.
It's on my life list. It's on my life list.
Their worship was amazing, how they came in, and many had walked for miles to get there. And we are having trouble filling our churches here, but they came in with such a praise. Somewhere, probably one of them was like 500 people. And I looked out and I'm like, okay, you want me to talk? You know, okay, God. And I'm grateful for just that opportunity to bridge both my ministry along with then sharing about HIV and AIDS. And
then you heard the word of God saying, and you're saying, why me? And he's saying, Why not you?
Why not you? Why not you? So get up and share my
Yeah,
word. Yes.
exactly.
You're right. Move and share my
Move.
word.
That's right. That's right.
And so the writing came while I was sick. So the things that I am publishing now was given to me during a time I was basically in the house anyway. And so I had night and day just sitting and just kind of writing whatever he gave to me. And so I'm in a season of publishing and putting that there. And my goal of that is originally it was to put it in writing so that my nieces and nephews would know, be able to refer back to it and have word in writing that they could pull at whatever point in time they wanted to see and read and hear, and be able to get an encouraging word or something that would be shared, hopefully to empower them and encourage them to go on and reach their full potential. And so it was really designed for them. But God had a bigger plan of expansion. And so as I have written, some of those things, my goal is to create a legacy that can be passed down as we read many of the either novels or we read poems like a Maya Angelou and songs and music. Those things live on even when we're no longer here. And so I don't want to die with the story within. If it can be said or written to help someone along the way, I'm trying to do what I can do and do my little part.
Well, you want to talk about each one individually, or you want to talk about them collectively? Collectively, what I really want to know is, how was your publishing journey? Did you self-publish? And why did you decide to do it that way?
My first book, the one that's no longer on the market, was actually self-published through F.R.E.S.H. F.R.E.S.H then went on to be Create Space, I believe, and now it's Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon.
Okay.
And I published that way because, again, that same brother had a colleague that had published through F.R.E.S.H at that time. And so I sat with him, talked to him, and he gave me insight. And then I went on my merry way and navigated to complete the first book that was Emails That Move. So as time had passed, and there in between had been probably 3 other people that I knew that saw that I had went ahead and put it in print, they likewise then put their stories in print through F.R.E.S.H and Create Space. And so when my journey came where I was ready to publish in 2020, one of those gentlemen had to show me.
So you published in the midst of the pandemic?
I did in 2020.
Okay.
That's when I started publishing that 10 years of books that written with pen and paper. And so 2020 was when I began to put those in print again. And one of the gentlemen that learned from me about F.R.E.S.H, he had to teach me how to do Kindle Direct Publishing. And once he gave me kind of the green light, gave me the framework, I went on in, and it was easy to be able, for me, to be able to put it in print. I am not as enthused, I'll use that word, about my cover. So I'm still looking for a cover artist. But
you'll find one at the book festival. Just, a closed mouth does not get fed. So make sure everybody knows that you're looking for a book cover.
Yeah, I'm looking for someone to design my covers for me, which will make them more appealing, is my goal for the future publications that are coming. There are more to come.
So you designed them yourself?
I did design them myself using Kindle Direct Publishing and what they had available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through the books one by one. So let's talk about Sister Girl A through Z.
Okay, Sister Girl A through Z was written, it's a devotional / affirmational. And what I learned in 2022 was that I wrote Sister Girl to really remind me of who I was in Christ. And I didn't realize it until God dropped that in my spirit in 2022. And I'm like, wow, okay. So Sister Girl A through Z is a very easy kind of read for us as adults. It does remind us of who we are in Christ. And it is a very user-friendly book for young ladies. You know, they can probably be in high school, young adults, and even for us as adults. So it's 26 letters. I took the words and I gave affirmational / devotional that follows for each of them. So that's Sister Girl. But Sister Girl then evolved into a Sister Girl conference
Okay.
as of last year. And so there was 60 women, ranging from ages 21 to probably 80, maybe 80, 85.
Nice range.
We came together and we just enjoyed each other. And we call the conference Sister Girl Moving ... My daughter designed that so that it is whatever it needs to be for you. And we had 4 dynamic speakers, and I ended up closing. Then we went into, because of one of my books, we kind of went into a prayer aspect, and vendors, and we just had an awesome time. So that was last June. Sister Girl number 2, she's coming up in March, on March 25th.
Okay.
Here in the Ridge area, and I'm excited about the agenda coming up. And it all stems from the book.
Well, make sure you bring some material to the book festival so we can pass it out while you're here. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. But we're going to be talking about, I'll say real quick, we're going to be talking about purpose, moving with our purpose, moving with confidence and power. And we're going to have the last person speak on moving the next level. And whatever age range we're in, we all have to do that. We got to keep it moving. So it was designed based upon the senior citizens so that we don't sit back and get in our recliners and not think we have any purpose or any reason to keep going. We might have health issues and we can't figure it out, but we still have purpose and we got to keep pushing and getting it going. And the young people that are trying to figure it all out, the conference is designed to try to meet both needs.
I like the fact that what you're trying to explain to the younger women is that you will never be that same person you were at 21. Every 10 years, you are a different woman. You know, you go from a girl to a lady, to a woman, to a seasoned veteran, right?
Yes.
And all those stages are very important and wonderful all at the same time. So thank you for that. I think Jamie Foxx said that he was at a club one night. The girls were saying, oh, you know, I'm 22. And she says, oh, I'm 25. And she said to her girlfriend, she says, oh, she's old. She's 27. So Jamie Foxx is sitting there thinking, I'm not even going to tell him how old I am.
Right.
So he told them how old he was. And they were like, oh, like he was getting ready to die. But what we have to make very, very clear is that God keeps you here. There are so many seeds to be sown, right? And you just have to find what those seeds are. So thank you so much for that. Let's go into prayer without ceasing. There's 2 of those, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. There is 2 of those. Pray Without Ceasing, Prayer Works is the title. And that was written for my mother. My mother passed in 2017. And before she died and before I got sick, I remember her talking about wanting to write some books. And she was a marketer for my little emails that moved. Mom would take it and tell everybody about it. And so she ended up being a minister as well. I think she preached her initial sermon in her late 70s, might have been pushing 80, although she had been called since she was young. So we know how that challenge is. She was sitting with that calling all those years, and no one would allow her to mount the pulpit until someone at in her 70s allowed her to fulfill that dream and desire and vision that God had given her in her belly. And so she wanted to write on prayer. Prayer was an area. She was a prayer warrior. And so she really desired to do that. She died with the story within her, but she left us enough notes, some notes that I could pull from. And then I sat with that up until 2021. And then I said to my siblings, okay, they were looking at me, Janae, you're an author. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't do this right now.
Right. I got a lot of other stuff.
I can't do this. No, I felt like I couldn't even write for her at that moment.
For your mother, right?
Yes. And so then in 2021, God said, you can do this. Go ahead, start writing. And so I told my siblings, and I literally wrote the book for her and infused her words that she left for us and quoted her into the book. And so we dedicated to her in 2021. And Mom was a journaler. She was not a journalist. She was a nurse by background, but she wrote on everything. On the back of papers, on the back of bills, on envelopes, on napkins. And I'm still reading word out of her bedroom. I'm like, oh, that was a good word, my boy. I like that. Let me keep that piece of paper. And so what God showed me in 2022 was the fact that she was a journaler. And so he said, so why don't you write a journal? And I said, oh, that makes sense. And so out of that evolved Pray Without Ceasing Prayer Works prayer journal. And it's a 365-day journal that has verses, it has quotes and thoughts. And it's designed with lines so that we could really look at prayer and what that means for us individually. And so that's Pray Without Ceasing Prayer Works.
Okay, that leaves us inspired.
Inspired was my book of poetry. And that was the actual first out of the docket, if you will. Expired was the one that came first after my illness. And I had forgotten that I wrote poetry as a child. And it took recently, after I published the book, I started thinking, and I said, you know what? You did write a few poems when you were in elementary school. And then I reflected and I said, okay, I'm married now. And I remember now writing those poems to my husband. And then when we were dating, I would write him some poetry as well. And so while I was sick, I began to write the poems. And
but you and your husband are childhood sweethearts. Is that what you're saying?
No. Oh, no. No, I met him. I was probably like 28 or so.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been 24 years in marriage, and so I did write him a few poems back in that day, and so the poems came while I was sick. And I would sit and I would write them and I tucked them away again and I pulled them out. And that was the first book that I published, was the book of poetry. 52 poems and meditations that move, MOVE again, your soul.
So I hope you're ready to, I think they call it spit one of those poems when you're here, because we have a kaleidoscope of poetry on Friday nights. So you don't have to know them by heart, but would be nice to have something inspirational. So just kind of pick one and be a part of that group of young people. Well, most of them are younger than me, but doesn't matter. Our poetry is all seasoned and done well. So doesn't matter who's spitting it. I have a great affinity for poets who can stand up and spit it out and not read it and remember it. I just think that is such a gift. You know, being a novelist is one thing, but to stand up there and read stanza after stanza after stanza with no paper, yeah.
I
So
agree wholeheartedly.
we're going to have some powerful poets at this event, and I hope you do join them. So tell me, let's back up. So, and this has nothing to do with anything, except that I just want your opinion. So your mother waited until she was late in life before someone would give her an invitation to the pulpit. How did that make you feel as a woman, as a pastor?
Um, it was difficult, very difficult, because I, as her daughter, I watched and knew, and everybody knew that she had the calling on her life.
Right.
Mom used it as a patient representative at the hospital, and she was counseling and talking and chaplaincy at the hospital, even though she wasn't a minister. They called on her to do the prayer and so and on and on. She would pray with everybody wherever, and that's in the book. She'll pray in the thrift store. She'll pray at the hotel lobby. Mom, they just were drawn to her. And so it did hurt. Even for me, my kind of childhood church of which we grew up in, they didn't believe in women preachers. And actually, they've only licensed one. So many of us, unfortunately,
to this
day, many of us, unfortunately, had to leave in order to kind of get our license, because we knew we had a call on our lives. I'm included in that number. And so I migrated, and was with another ministry and was licensed and stayed and worked. And, then I was called back home, and they did allow us to mount the pulpit. And there was two of us, but I was one of the first women that they allowed to mount the pulpit. Was blessed then to sit with my dad, who passed in 2015, but we would mount to the same time. And for me, that was an honor, a great honor.
Did you ever address that from the pulpit, or you didn't think that was the thing to do? Okay.
No, we never addressed it, either of us. We were just proud that there was a breakthrough moment for us as women in ministry. Even now, I will sit with some of the pastors. I'm not a pastor, I'm a minister,
Right.
social minister, but I would sit with them, and I had a pastor friend, have known him all through my life, but I didn't know that he still didn't believe in women preachers. And he said, a woman will never mount my pulpit in my church. And I said, really?
Today?
He said, yeah, I'm still diehard like your dad was. I said, yes, he was. But then when he heard me preach and he saw the anointing of God on me, it softened his heart. And I asked this gentleman, I said, well, what about the prophet Huldah? Nobody talks about her, but she was a prophet in the Old Testament. And he said,
who?
He said, and I said, so what about that? She was a prophet, called prophet. And I said, nobody mentions her. We all mention Mary Magdalene and we mention the others, but we don't mention her at all. But she was in the Old Testament as a prophet. And so we talked a little bit.
What was his response?
He didn't really have one, but he said he was going to stand strong on his position. And I said, I understand, and it's your pulpit, so you can do whatever God tells you to do. And so we're still friends. We still hang out and we pray and worship and stuff together. But that is his stance, along with many others that I still come across, and that's okay. But I believe that we likewise can carry the message of Jesus Christ and his goodness. And as disciples, as ministers, we're all called to share it, whether we're, quote, reverend minister or not, we're called to be his disciples on the earth.
So tell us what's next. What's next for you?
Oh, what's next? What's next? Okay, I'm excited about this. I am writing Mom's second book. So
Okay.
I launched into the second one. She wanted an autobiography and she never got that. But what I found in her room was information that I didn't even know all these years. And unfortunately, she's passed on. Excuse me. But she had many firsts as a Black African American, then Black colored nurse, who received a bachelor's degree at St. Augustine and went on to work in the 60s at Johns Hopkins Hospital as a bachelor's prepared registered nurse, African American woman, which was very rare.
Very rare.
And she then
Still rare.
Yeah, very rare. And she migrated to Alexandria Hospital, then Duke Street Hospital, where she had many firsts. And I read recently, which I did not know all these years of her living, but she helped to integrate Duke Street Hospital in the 60s. She helped to move the first after Black man into the same room with a white person. And I was like, whoa, Mom, you didn't tell us about that. I'm sitting here talking to her. She's long gone, but she's listening. And so with all of that, the book is called Walk in My Shoes. The story of two nurses, my mother and me, or my mother and I. I'll have to figure out which way. I want to say my mother and me, but I know it's not grammatically correct.
Your book.
So I'm writing that book, which will tell her story, and also likewise tell my story as an African-American nurse and working in HIV and AIDS, and the journey towards getting a PhD and being a rarity. Went to George Mason University, of which I believe there was two of us, and I think I was the youngest of the many nurses that graduated with a PhD. So it's kind of like a 0.2%.
I think we take for granted the first that we all have done and don't document. We need to do a better job of that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Really, really, really do, because yeah, we do. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. We kind of do it and don't think about it.
Don't even think about it.
Which is what happened for me until I started to write my story. I hadn't even accounted any of these things as, quote, the first, because I was an African-American president at James Madison University for their nursing department. I was the person that was 0.5 from getting into the nursing school. And I had to go and talk to the dean and plead my case. And this particular white dean, she gave me an opportunity. And so by the end, my classmates nominated me as the president. That would have never happened had she not given me an opportunity. I wouldn't have a PhD today had she not given me that opportunity. So I'm just, even today, she's gone on, and I used to keep in touch with her. I'm grateful that she gave me the opportunity, one of three Black young women trying to make it in a PWI.
Yeah. For those who don't know what a PWI is, it is a
predominantly white university institution.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And George Mason, I was there when I-66 was being built. And I think George Mason wasn't even a college. It was, I don't know what it was, a technical school?
Yes.
Yeah? It was a technical school. So it has really risen out of, out of the ashes to this huge university. And yes, it was predominantly unmelanated. And so, yes, you are definitely a Black history moment, and you ought to document that. So I don't have any other questions for you. If you want to share something else with us, I know that I've asked you for a pearl of wisdom, because that's what we ask everybody to give us before they leave the show.
I'd like to share one other thing before I get
absolutely.
So I wrote my dissertation in the early 2000s when the buzzword was there on cultural competency, and it was just kind of coming out, and people were starting to talk about it. The government was making grants, etc. And so I wrote it on cultural competency in HIV and AIDS care. And I want to say it was 2003, I believe. kind of when I graduated or was writing the dissertation. And so I began to speak in things regarding that in the area, national, et cetera. So now I'm working on my PhD in ministry.
Mm.
My topic is cultural competency. Is it necessary in ministry? And so I'm kind of bridging the gap, if you will. And we're having that discussion. What does cultural competency mean? It's not just race, ethnicity, but it's the breadth of subcultures, et cetera. And so I know I'm treading into some water there, but it's been an interesting journey. And so I'm hoping to complete that. It was supposed to have been this month. It's not going to happen. It'll probably be this year, I hope. And then by the end of the year, my goal would be to publish a book related to cultural competency and cultural diversity. And so that's kind of the other piece that I'm hoping to accomplish this year.
Well, now that we've all worked for the federal government or worked for institutions where you had to write, sign certain agreements that you couldn't talk about this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do this. If not now, when? Now's our time, because we've been through the silencing, right? And so you get to this point where you're 20 to 30, where you can really say what you want because you're not vested in your job yet, and you haven't signed these agreements of silence. And then from 20 to 50, you're stuck because there are things you can't say, things you can't do. But I'm on the other side of that. So I just think that now is the time to say and do all the things. And we might not be able to march and we might not be able to walk, but we certainly have a platform now to say and do what we believe is right. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yes.
It's our time. It's our time. It's our seasoned veterans' time. It's our time.
And it is our time.
I will ask you for a pearl of wisdom.
I guess my pearl of wisdom would be that we should write to leave a message, and we should write to leave a legacy for those that are to come, for those that are present, and for those that are to come. Because as you just said, Miss Donna Gray Banks, as you just said, our voice and our message is important. So that's the reason why I write, and I believe that that is why we should continue to write, so that those stories do not die within us. And then as we learn how to write, be willing to share what we've learned with others. Otherwise, their stories will likewise go to the grave with them, and their testimonies as well. So, yes.
You can't take your money and you can't take your words to the grave.
Nope.
You can take them, but what good would it do, right?
Yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Mackey-Padilla. I look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks. Wow. Yeah, exactly 4 weeks today. And
I am looking forward to it, and I bought my ticket today.
And thank you all. I'll see you in March. Pat Williams is the best volunteer ever. She's been with me, I don't even know how many years. God bless you for being here tonight, Pat. She has put up, how you doing? She's put up with me since, I don't know, Pat, since 2004, 2004, something like that, something crazy. So thank you so much. It's not, I tell people all the time, my face might be out there, but I'm not the one doing all the work. I got a team that's unbelievable, who believe in literacy as a legacy. And I thank you all. I thank you all for being here every Monday night. I certainly, listen, I know you got better things to do, but literacy is, it's important for all of us, and it's a legacy. And as usual, when the lights go out and the Cell phone towers go down. All you have left is a flashlight and a good book. And I see you all in 4 weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Imani. She is the best. Oh, Imani puts up a whole lot with our melanated people. I appreciate you and all that you do. Here in Palm Coast, Imani, thank you so much. Stan, Tam Fam, love you. And Martindale, I'll see you all in 4 weeks. Thank you so much. That's your whole government name, yes? Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, listen, we're going to upload it to YouTube, and I'll send it to you within the hour.
Sounds great.
Good night. Good night, everybody.